Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and we also have
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
today we're going to talk about something that was announced a while ago. I think it's almost over a month ago that John Ridley is going to be the new writer of the Black Panther series, and this comes after the ta-nehisi Coates' run ends this same month, so they have another name on this book. It's going to start in August, and I mean, I have some thoughts about it, but let Cal has his thing of what he wants to say about this. What do you say, Cal?
Well, I hope we're not setting this up where Black Panther is going to become the affirmative action book. And the only people who are going to be on the book are Black writers, and not just Black writers, but Black writers who have name recognition. So there could be, I mean, as of right now, if I were to just base this on Black Panther, I would think that there aren't any Black comic book writers. The people who are getting put on the book are, novelists, people writing memoirs, directors. That's been Reginald Hudlin, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and then now with John Ridley. And so the question I would ask is, well, are there any Black writers in comics who could actually be on the Black Panther, aside of Christopher Priest, who's already done it? And are we setting this book up so that the only people who are going to be on this book are going to be Black writers, and that's it? I would hope that that's not the case for this character. I would hope if there's a hot writer, somebody who can really do a good job and turn in some stories, that they're like, hey, let's put him on the book, tell some really good stories, get some adventures, going for the Black Panther, and so on and so forth. And it also starts to put him in this category. Well, you don't want to do the easy route, because then, everybody's all, diversity, this, that, and the other becomes the easy route. Anytime somebody says something, oh, look at Black Panther, we got this guy over here, we got this guy writing it. So, yeah, we got it, we got it right over here. Yeah. And that's what I see coming down the pike, not simply from John Ridley being on the book, but this has been for the last this has been for the last 3 volumes of Black Panther. Christopher Priest, I'm not counting, because previous to Christopher Priest, the person who had written Black Panther, actually the person who's written Black Panther the longest, was Don McGregor, who is surely not Black, but had done the most work with the character. And then after Christopher Priest, it's been this particular shift, and I do find it concerning.
Um, Ultimately, it's still a show of the time, and I guess somewhere ushered in with the Bill Jemis, and later when Quesada became editor in chief, it became about pitching stuff to Hollywood. So yes, John Ridley is someone from Hollywood. He's Black, but this is still going for the name is the gimmick. So ultimately, it gets a write up in the New York Times, as you see, and that gives you your maximum sort of numbers to sort of maybe. I mean, this sort of we've seen this happen with comic character that this moves the needle in sales. So I can't necessarily fault them for doing it because it's actually leading to them getting their bigger success and having these writers come out and speak out about stuff and and that sort of thing, and then asking them every other thing about Black culture that they possibly can while they're working on the Black Panther comic book. And the other thing is that when they're doing their movie, maybe they could talk about this. But ultimately, it is as that is that point of maybe the not giving a shot to either the Black writers that are already in comic books that they could find, or someone who's coming up who has some interest in the book. But then at the same time, it just shows you that they're not ready to let go and saying, whoever the hot person is, Issa Rae, you write the Black Panther. It's like,
Issa Rae?
I'm
Oh,
saying
oh
that's
Lord.
the gag, is like that sort of thing where it's like we just sort of put whoever on the book.
Well,
And
she's busy being the voice of Spider Woman, so she can't write anything right now.
so yeah, that's one of the things where you look at it and say it could be that, but at the same time, comic books in such a way, and that the Black Panther, even though there's been a buzz behind a lot of these, runs, whether it be the Hudlin run or the ta-nehisi Coates' run, and like saying this big buzz around it, ultimately this sort of thing dies out and kind of moves on. So I mean they're still doing this. So what can you do? I can't
Well,
I
look at
can't fault
the
them for doing that because that's what this is what how people sell their stuff now.
look at if you just look at the runs, the last run of Black Panther, and everybody says this. The guys who come on, they all say it. The last run of Black Panther that was influential, that was groundbreaking, innovative, everything that they want, all the positive accolades was whose? Christopher Priest. Christopher Priest, comic book writer. So there was no hoopla or buzz when Priest came on. Priest came on, you know, turned out, X amount of stories, so on and so forth. And then he was, and then he was off the book. Every run that came after, every run that came after, no, did not have the same sort of spirit fire or even the ingenuity that Christopher Priest had while he was on the book. But it is going to get some buzz because you threw a name on there. So you threw Hudlin on there, okay. Guys came over. Oh, Reginald Hudlin, director. He's writing Black Panther. Let's see. And Hudlin's run was some mediocre stuff at the end of the day. I can say that it did get better, as it went on. But this was a guy who's not familiar with comic books. This was a guy who wasn't familiar with all of these characters. And so he still had a learning curve. He still had a learning curve as it was going on. But one of the things I did note is that his run was uninterrupted. So while he was on the book, no, he was on the book until the book was pretty much over. That was it. There might have been a fill-in issue here and there, but he was on the book until it was over. Same thing for Coates. Coates is on the book until it's over. So I can understand you. Look, you want some buzz? Okay, good. Let's get one of these guys come in for some buzz, no problem. And then, maybe we could, change it up a little bit. Maybe, put somebody on here who also has some buzz, but for being a good writer within comics. Like, oh, this guy's turning it out. Like Donnie Cates or something of that nature. Not necessarily saying that he's the, greatest writer, but somebody with some, somebody with some buzz behind him, or Al Ewing at the end of the day, somebody with some buzz. But that's not the case for the Black Panther. Black Panther, we're going for the buzz, okay, and we're going for the black buzz at the end of the day. You know, I think it's hard because in the span of comics, it hasn't really been done that long. It's been 3 volumes. Black Panther has yet to be in a series that's made 100 issues. I think this one's gonna stop at about 50 with ta-nehisi Coates. But the best one, the best series that was written, everybody looks back on two runs. It's either Christopher Priest's run or Don McGregor's run. That Panther's Rage run, or what Christopher Priest did while he was on the book, issues 1 to 47. Those are the quintessential Black Panther story that you need to read. Everything afterwards, yeah, you got some buzz and you may have had some competent storytelling, but then we don't get, there's nothing else. There's nothing that you can actually build off of. You familiar with this writer, Gene Luen Yang?
No, was that from Marvel? Someone recent?
He's the first Chinese American, if you will, to write Superman.
Uh-huh.
So he had a run on Superman. Okay, no real big buzz for it, even though he had made his name doing graphic novels first, and then he came to DC. So I'm looking at what he wrote for Superman, and the trouble is he was there during the New 52, and I know the Dan Didio liked to micromanage, so they wanted him to write certain stories for Superman. It wasn't like these were necessarily his ideas, but they were like, hey, we'd like you to come on and write, and this is the story of the idea we had, so he's writing to that story idea. So I'm watching, I'm reading stuff, and I'm looking at it going over, and I'm wondering what this guy could have done without the editorial influence. But this is still a comic book writer, and I could see him getting better as he went on. He did some stuff later with Superman in a he did some stuff later with Superman in a 3-issue series, Superman versus the Ku Klux Klan, or Superman versus the Klan. And that you can see his writing skills for a superhero like Superman getting better, even though he leans heavily on the supporting cast of that particular story. And then he was also the writer on something new, Superman, as well. And you see him getting more of a stride, more of a familiarity for those type of characters. But that's what happens when you get a comic book writer to come on there and they get themselves familiar with it. a lot of these other guys who are coming on as directors and such, and they're probably giving them carte blanche to do a lot of stuff that they would like to do, with the exception of, I guess, killing the character or just totally inverting the character. But most of the stuff that they're coming on is, hey, this is just the run that they have, and there's nothing else there to it. There's nothing left to build. They're not building on anything. Not when you have a character like the Black Panther, and one of the themes of the Black Panther is that the country he presides over, Wakanda, was never colonized. And then Ta-Nehisi Coates decides to write the Galactic Empire of Wakanda, which totally, is these guys going out and colonizing at the end of the day. I just find there's very little justification for it. But what he does write over there isn't something that, okay, I'm done. I'm going to leave some stuff that somebody else can play with. And the character's pretty much still, the character's pretty much still held together at the end of the day, which happened with Priest and which happened with McGregor. These guys come on, do their business, and leave.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, keeping the Black Panther selling is what they had to do, and they haven't found anything of sort of allowing the writers or artists sort of come up. I guess the artists have to come up and become the hot names. So, I mean, this sort of process is going to continue to happen. Whoever's hot, obviously. I think it was John Ridley, the writer of 12 Years a Slave. So it's like, hey, we still have some fond memories of that. So let's get that guy. We'll get the guy who did that thing from that thing. That sort of thing where it's like, well, who's that guy? Something from some sort of Black property. So, I mean, as of right now, it's still, the sales are really down. So it's like, it's interesting to see. And this time, Marvel has kind of been, allowing the creators to go to DC and not pay the big cash outs. But so it's interesting to see them find some money the for the Black Panther writer.
Well, they
Otherwise,
got,
all the big
I
names
mean,
left.
they're going to have to. They don't want to do. One thing that Marvel tends to do that I always give DC grief for is that DC will have something out like, oh, we got a show out. What's the show? Oh, we got a Supergirl show out. How's it doing? Oh, the ratings are okay. This, that, and the other. Do we have a comic out? Huh?
Mm.
Huh?
Yeah.
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 At least with Marvel, like, no, we got to keep this going. We got to keep this book out. We got to keep this thing going because we know we got a movie coming down the pike. we don't want to play. We don't want to play catch up. I mean, when Ta-Nehisi Coates' run debuted, that was Black Panther was the #1 book.
Yep.
That was the #1 book when it debuted, when Ta-Nehisi Coates was writing, but that was because of all this buzz around the character. Okay, I think you could have had, you could have had nearly anybody on the book, and it would have probably debuted at #1 at the end of the day. So, there was a lot of interest, a lot of buzz, a lot of goodwill towards the book, towards the character. So now I'm not too. I mean, John Ridley's doing some stuff over with DC. What was it? The other history of the DC universe.
Yes.
I was kind of iffy about it. I read one issue. It's not bad storytelling. I just don't know how needed it is at the end of the day. And since it's from the viewpoints of these particular characters, well, I think we already did a show on that, so I don't want to get too much into it. But it's readable. It's readable. In some parts, it's entertaining. I just don't know how feasible it is in terms of the overall DC universe. And then his take on some of the characters is, for me, is kind of questionable as well. But that's what he's doing there. Get to see what he does on we'll get to see what he does on Black Panther. But I mean, I would ask the question to anyone. I was like, can you think of a Black comic book writer who they could have just put on the book rather than going that particular route with it? And I'm pretty certain most people would be hard. I mean, aside of Christopher Priest, most people would be really hard pressed to say, oh, yeah, if you want to put a Black writer on here, put this person on there right there. And if not, I would just say, look, why don't you just put some hot talent on there? Because you're not necessarily going to be looking for a Black artist. You're going to look for some top talent. You're going to look for whatever top talent that you can put on here, and you're going to look for some really, the way Marvel does it. Marvel like to, do the first issue and have, like 27 different covers, all these variants. But who are you going to get for the covers? You're going to come over. You're going to get Alex Ross. You're going to get. You're probably going to get In Lee. You're going to get all the top names that come over there and churn out these covers. you don't have any problem with that, you should probably think the same in terms of the writing. I mean, and again, I'm going to give John Ridley a fair go, but the last few guys who have come on here aren't comic book writers, and what they're doing is singular to what they're doing for the character, and not necessarily something that is growing the character like was done with McGregor and Christopher Priest.
Well, I mean, I don't want to shy away from the other comic book work because the using the other history of the DC universe and not even just the black characters, like he is trying to take some of the histories and put it through a modern lens. So it's like, and that doesn't always bode well for what's happening because we have a guy who's taking a a mixed up relationship, which was Deathstroke and Terra, and turn it into that she was a victim being coerced by this villain, this pedophile, and all this other stuff. Rather than just say, this chick is a terrorist. She's nutty. She has a terrible past that caused her to be touched in the head. And she searched the character and searched out Deathstroke. Deathstroke, obviously, with his plans, could get into the Titan, so he would go well into going going into her, her ideas. Obviously, he could mold her into the way to doing what he wanted to do, which was, hey, befriend these guys, don't mess up, and we can kill them together, or we can make out of this money, and then turn it into this girl who's kind of turning into like a girl off the street being like pulled in by a pimp or a pedophile, the sort of grooming type of thing. He's a bad guy. Deathstroke is a bad guy. He's a mercenary. Don't care about much, and doesn't care about the means to do it. But with that said, his writing and turning Terra into a victim, she's not one. She's evil. Perez, and if you say I'm wrong, you got Perez and more so Perez than Wolfman, where Perez was like, "Hey, what do you think the scene was when we saw them in, kind of after, in her in the nightgown?" To say that this is the best, huh?
I said post coitus.
Yeah, so seeing them that way, and it's just like, you're showing you that these guys are bad, and we're trying to let you know these guys are bad. That's it. We're not trying to say to you that she's a victim, and that's what the whole last issue was. When the Titans, she has reason to side with the Titans because the Titans are trying to talk her down the best way they could, and she's just like, nope, everybody dies, everybody's going. And was it Wonder Girl has to save Nightwing because Nightwing's covered in like rock, and she breaks him out, and then she's like, "What's?" One World doesn't know what's going on. And I'll tell you afterwards if we survive it. There's no Deathstroke doing anything. It's all Terror. So that sort of shoddy sort of writing is sort of saying, hey, we can't do what this is. So you know what? Because people think, oh, this will be my chance to fix this. I've been always wanting to fix this. Or someone in his ear saying, hey, know what you could do? You can kind of touch on this thing. So that kind of doesn't bode well for this Black Panther if he goes through it and tries to find, hey, Storm, trying to win with Wolverine or something like that, and we're gonna do a whole story about that post divorce. Like, I don't want to see any more stories about that. Didn't like it when it happened.
That's the danger. That's the danger when you bring cats in and they're not really part of that comic book continuity or that continuum. Even though it can still happen if they are part of it.
Yes.
But it's exactly what you said, because it'll come over. If you read the stories, or if you even had a short conversation with Marv Wolfman and just said, "Hey, was Deathstroke a pedophile?" You're like, "What? What are you talking about?" And he was like, "No, just read the story." And he tell you right over here, this, that, and the other. Yes, Terra is evil. Okay, she's the villain. She's a worse villain than Deathstroke in this particular story. Or as I would say, this would be like, hey, did you go see Training Day? And after Training Day, when you left the theater, were you still wondering if Denzel Washington's character, what was the villain? That's Terra. Okay, that's Terra in Deathstroke. You're waiting for something to rehabilitate or redeem her or something of that nature, some story to say this is why she's doing it because you saw the character for such a long period of time, and then now when you're given this hard shift, there's a part of your brain that doesn't want to accept it, especially since one of the tropes in comics is those characters are tend to, well, Deathstroke misled her. Like, no, she knew what she was doing. Deathstroke was just in on the in for it on the ride. But you'll have people now to say, oh no, Deathstroke, of course Deathstroke was a pedophile. He had to be a pedophile. Look at that. Look what was going on. This, that, and the other, and so on and so forth. And because they're not part of that continuum, we're like, oh, they come, oh yeah, there might be something to that, and then they think it's topical, and then we get those type of stories. With the Black Panther, part of the apprehension they always have is that right now, being Black, or as they like to say, a person of color, is topical, and what's going on, in terms of policing, or I don't know, a whole bunch of stuff going on. These things are topical. And then it becomes, all right, I'm going to filter this into the Black Panther because he's, a Black character, and these particular things are topical, even though they have nothing to do with the Black Panther, at all. And so if you do try to do stuff, well, he's a king of an African nation. Let's talk about, oh, I know what we can do. We can talk about the country being overrun and in civil war, because that's what's going on in a lot of these African countries, but not Wakanda. Okay, not Wakanda at the end of the day. And then how much do you know the Marvel universe, so you can actually bring in stuff from the rest of the Marvel universe to keep the Black Panther connected? Because that was also something that was an issue, where the Black Panther would have these adventures and they would be set in Wakanda. And so, okay, it became like he existed in his own universe, and he wasn't really connected with the other characters unless he was doing an event on, unless he was in the Avengers book or showing up with the Fantastic Four. Though Don McGregor did specify that he wanted to do, when he did Panther's Rage and Jungle Action, he wanted to have the whole thing set in Wakanda. I don't know if you heard this, because I heard this from McGregor, because they told him, like, look, when he was doing the Panther's Rage run, they were asking him, he said he didn't want to have any white characters. He didn't want to have any white characters in the story. And they were like, come on, just put in one white character, one white character. So he put in this character called Venom, who was a villain. He put this character called, and they were like, that's not what we meant, we want to, that's not what we meant. So the Panther's Rage run is over, and they're like, okay, can you put in some white characters, just, come on, just so people who are reading, people who aren't Black reading the book, so on and so forth. So he says, okay, I'll put in some white characters. Who does he put in? He puts in the Ku Klux Klan.
Well, that's the other thing that we're branching out here, but that's the other thing when you look at the Black Panther movie, you had the government agent who's a white guy, and he's the pilot of the thing to take out stuff, and it's just like you got all these other people, that all this other Dora Milaje or that sort of thing to fly this thing. We don't need the white dude to do it, but it's like that old sort of thing of saying, well, like people don't understand is like, who are the white people going to relate to? So, all right, you understand? Yes, back in the day, they wouldn't necessarily relate to the Black characters, and some would. Like the people looked at who's the guy like Richard Pryor, they'd be like, oh, they became comedians. And then you had, what is it? Whenever Beverly Hills Cop came, every kid, Black, white, Chinese, wanted to be Eddie Murphy. So it's like if you get a cool character and put him in the lead post Eddie Murphy, they will want to be the Black guy. As long as you're cool, as long as you're action packed, or this, that, and the other, or the killer, or whatever it might be, or you're the people wanting to be Morpheus or any of that thing, it happens. So let's not turn around and be like, hey, we got to, that sort of thing we saw on the Black Panther, but it's really straying off, and we're just hoping that, because it's hard, because we've had these sort of, we've had these guys who've been either in movies and novels and this, that, and the other, and it's a different sort of brain action. If you even look at Kevin Smith, the talk of what they did on the Guardian Devil, the early part of it is Marvel style, where Kevin Smith didn't have time to write, and he said, well, just tell me the story and I'll start it. And then he started writing scripts and piling all this stuff in there and thinking that they're a junior, what's the name? I mean, it's hard to use Alan Moore because ultimately, when you see some of his layouts for the image stuff that he did, they are quality comic layouts that you could redraw, you could put on a light box and just enhance and do it exactly as Alan Moore. So Alan Moore, even though he'd write heavily lengthy scripts the size of this Marvel book right here, at the same time, you see that the stuff that he did in his layouts, he understands the form. A lot of these writers, like it was a J.M. Straczynski and that sort of thing, where they have to allow the artist to say. That's why they had who's that guy? They had like John Romita Jr. on the first part of the Hudlin run and saying, hey, kind of just bring what it is to the table you feel it needs. And they did the same with Straczynski, having John Romita Jr. work with him, saying this guy's a strong storyteller. You don't need to give him much, even if you're a dialogue guy. And that's one of the things we have to remember, that these guys don't always bring the other muscle to it. And in the past, when writers, even like Larry Niven, when he would do stuff for comics, he did a Green Lantern with a Ganthet's Tale. The idea was that he had this idea, but at the same time, he was like, hey, it'd be easier just let the comic book guys do it, or Harlan Ellison giving his work, giving his plots to who is it, to Roy Thomas, and then the comic book coming out that way. So you have a comic writer kind of filtering these ideas and sort of bringing this thing to life. We got some classic stories out of that. I think it's the Hulk versus Cyclops and the journey to the center of the earth sort of thing. So it can be done. It can be cool stuff, but using those ideas and kind of pushing them the right way so you get the best comics. And right now, the writers of these other things have the power. So that's the thing I would worry about. And I know I started saying I understood why they would do it, but it's kind of also the problem of saying, hey, like, how is this going to come out? Is it going to be visual enough? And that's what you have to remember. Will it be visual? Will it be visual once it gets to the sixth part of a six-part story? And that was the horror of Ultimate Spider-Man. Even though, what's the name? Drew his own comic books, but he was a heavily on the writing side. But I mean, ultimately, it was a success for Marvel. So maybe it could still be a success even if it's a boring comic book. Because this guy's a name. So I've come circle and I've circled it around one more time. Anything else you got for this one?
Free Black Panther.
Let's remember there were some white guys writing the Black Panther, and they did okay. Some people don't like the obviously, as you said, the lengthy runs by Don McGregor. I'm just huh?
Who doesn't like that run? That was before Don McGregor.
Well, who doesn't like his run? Steve Englehart. He tried to make a joke about the dialogue being
whatever.
And I'm just like, it's not as bad. It might be like, kind of heavy, but it's not the way what's the name went too far. And I was like, I don't get the joke. I have read McGregor's writing, and it's
Don McGregor's run. And before Don McGregor's run, the Black Panther was a supporting character. He was a supporting character in the Fantastic Four. He was a supporting character in the Avengers. Every once in a while, he may get some solo light. Don McGregor's run made him a starring character. Don McGregor's run fully formed Wakanda for us. There was all the stuff that we got there in that run. And that run, I have to say, starts in jungle action and then ends with, is it Panther's Prey or Panther's, I think it's Panther's Quest. I think it all ends up, no, it ends in Panther's Prey. I think Panther's Quest comes before, but those things, and you could tell the care and the craftsmanship with this, we wouldn't have the Black Panther we have today without all of that, because all that, he would have just been a supporting character who popped up here like like the Crow in Captain America, and we would see him every now and then we wouldn't see him afterwards. And then Christopher Priest did an excellent job of building on everything that was left there. But this is stuff that comic writers do, because you have to do it. You couldn't, just come in and do that. These guys wouldn't let you do it. But then, of course, you want the buzz, so you bring in these other cats over here. But Don McGregor's run, I mean, it wasn't perfect. You know, it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm sorry I just said that because nobody's run is perfect. But without Don McGregor's run to actually give a blueprint of some stuff that you could do with that character in terms of the Black Panther, we wouldn't have a lot of the stuff that we have right now.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, you can be critical of it, if you want to, but that there was nothing else. There was his origin and whatever appearances he made, and that was it. That was the first time it was all about him from start to finish. What I would just hope that we get from John Ridley is closer to what we got with Priest and with Don McGregor, where we get stories and it's about the Black Panther. It's not about stuff going on in the world and we got to tell these stories through him, but stuff about the Black Panther. And if it's going to be about Wakanda, stuff that is contributory towards Wakanda and not like, oh, what would be cool? What if we tried this? None of that Hollywood stuff of, well, let's go this up the flagpole and see what happens. Ah, man, that sucks. Oh well, you're off the book now anyway. It took you 5 years to tell that story. Thanks. Let's go on. Volume 7.
Well, you just sound more kind of post ta-nehisi Coates syndrome. It's
That's
like,
Coates,
mhm.
Hudlin. Okay, that's Coates and Hudlin. Hudlin's run. The only thing that I even cared for on that run was the fact that he got Storm and Black Panther together, and and that was for nothing because they got divorced in 2 panels. So I was like, okay, they shouldn't have even been
Yeah.
bothered with it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I think that's why it's always interesting. It's hard to do comic books the same way because there's not that much interest into sort of extracting what these other writers were coming up with and saying, the interesting part of Claremont talking about him and Byrne trying to figure out if they're going to have a love interest for Storm, and like ultimately they knew it had to be a character that kind of was generated within the book because it's like he said obviously the Black Panther is not a step down, it'd be right in the right lane for Storm, but then as a character you're like, well, is the Black Panther a supporting character for the X-Men, or is Storm, the leader of the X-Men, a supporting character for that? And it's like, yes, comic books have crossovers, but it's like it's not as deep as it was at that point. At some point, the thing is like Stan would be the guy who was doing all the books, so he could decide, hey, Doctor Strange is going to show up. Oh, here's here's Nick Fury, like that sort of thing. But it wasn't like you had to always go check this. Like they would have a thread where, oh, what's the name? Daredevil for Doctor Doom. And now Daredevil shows up in the Fantastic Four. And they kind of carried a thread, but it didn't, on that one, it didn't really work that well. So sometimes these sort of threads and type things don't always work. So, we've gone too much in the Hudlin run. The only thing we can say is that he did give the world Shuri. So, and people like Shuri and they want to give her everything. So, and it was supposed to be a comedic sort of someone to banter to at the same time. Whereas, McGregor was like had the even outside of the girlfriend, there's periods where the character would be a lead character that didn't need to have everybody in the book so he could like bounce off of it. So it's like one of the things of different ways you want to write. And that's one of the things where you see like Captain Marvel books having all these cast of characters of Alpha Flight and that sort of thing with her so she can, or talking to a computer, that sort of idiocy because they don't want to do thought balloons and all that stuff. That's the thought balloons talking to that dumb computer. But anyway, but yeah, let's see what happens. I would be more interested to see who they get to draw it. Maybe they get someone that would knows their business and we can have some cool stuff. They did have someone in Brian Stilfreeze who did the coach run, but ultimately, knowing Stilfreeze, he's not a guy to do long runs on characters. So it's like he might be. I'm not even sure if he might be less than Frank Cho, but Frank Cho will give you 6 issues.
Yeah, but
It's like 6 issues and that's it. Wasn't
Frank
it?
Cho will give you at least 4 issues, and then he's gonna go back to doing Liberty Meadows.
Yeah.
So Humphreys, the ah, I can't say I genuinely care for his art, with the exception of one cover that he did that I thought was awesome, and that was the hip hop cover he did. It was supposed to be the Black Album.
Mm-hmm.
That hip hop cover he did, I thought that I really liked that. When I saw that, I was like, that's destined to become one of these sought after covers that everybody, well, you know how comic guys do. It comes out, it's not the rare variant. So you're like, hey, look at this one over here. Oh, is that the rare variant? The one for 500? No, this is the hip hop variant by Stelford. Trash. And now it's like a $50, $100 book. Yeah, I thought that art right there. I love that. I love that cover. But aside of that, I just didn't find his artwork very imaginative.
Well, I mean, I've been a fan of his for a while, and he was also part of like the posts, if you remember, Legend, which was burned, and what's it, Frank Miller. He had he was part of a group called Blank Noir, which was a Gaijin Studios with Adam Hughes. All these guys that were kind of on the decent storytellers that were that were doing Image stuff, Marvel stuff, and he had a create own character that he was going to do, but it ultimately didn't happen. And a lot of that stuff, I think I can show you a picture of it, but I thought it was his character. I think his character was Brave. Was his character Brave? But that's Cully Hanner. He had this other character, but it was Max Velocity. That's what his character, which didn't really come out. It was in this book called um, the Heretic. So it was like, but it wasn't a big deal. It was like these other books that came out after Image didn't really sell as well, but it was more interesting, sort of the plotting and storytelling. These guys had a little more chops than the Image guys, but knowing that he wasn't going to be this big guy that was going to be able to do monthly comic books, and none of those guys really had interest in doing that stuff. So it's kind of sad. But at the same time, we got in the first issue, and the first issue kind of reminded me of the Image book, but that's neither here nor there. We're hoping for, I guess we're hoping for Black Panther to sell some more, and then maybe we get a cool artist on it, and maybe I'll check out a Marvel book for once in a while, because I haven't checked out anything, in recent times. So
Well,
we'll
I
see.
am looking forward to this. I am looking forward to this series. I'm glad to see Coates gone. I just found his run. What I did read of his run was just not engaging at all. So I didn't get the writing and I didn't get the art to keep me on the book. So I'm glad that Coates is gone. I am looking forward to this, despite all my criticisms about it. But I just don't want to see the book pigeonholed. I really don't want to see it pigeonholed as like, oh, we got to have a black writer on here, as opposed to we need top talent on here. Okay, and if that's a black writer, fine. But if it's not, I want to see top talent on the Black Panther. That's my foremost thing, because if you're not doing that, then eventually this book is going to run aground, because you can't sell a book just with buzz. It doesn't happen. So looking forward to it. I hope I can get the covers that I want, because they're bloody well expensive. Thank you, Marvel. I think they have at least 9 different covers. If I want to get all the covers, I'm going to have to pay like $200. And
Man.
I hate doing that. Here's why I hate doing it, because more often than not, if I wait, I can probably like snag a cover here and there. Even the more expensive ones, I can wait and I can get it at a better price at the end of the day. But on the off chance that I'm wrong, that means that $200 would have been that $200 I'm spending is going to look light if one of those covers ends up being this really hot cover, and then it goes to be 200 or 300 by itself. Then I'm going to look at it like, oh man, I wish I had spent the money. So that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest thing overall that I have. But aside of that, looking forward to the run. Just don't pigeonhole the Black Panther. So, come on, he's all we got. Don't pigeonhole him.
All right, then. Check out this August with a new Black Panther by John Ridley and an artist that I don't know who's going to be yet. Going to be doing it. Spin a rack.
Oh.
Later.